Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the 3-episode season 4 premiere of The Boys, and there's a lot to get through, so let's hit it. The first episode was called Department of Dirty Tricks, and it picks up right where the end of season 3 left off during the presidential election, in which Robert Singer is on the verge of victory, as the boys are on an infiltration mission with Starlight, aka Annie, at the Singer campaign headquarters. Meanwhile, Homelander, who is apparently on trial for murdering the person he murdered at the end of last season when they threw a plastic bottle at his kid, is busy turning his kid into a sociopath, to absolutely no one's surprise. Also at the Singer campaign headquarters, where he has a white-knuckle conversation with the hopeful future Vice President Victoria Newman. Butcher, meanwhile, approaches Homelander's son, Ryan, where he is in a back kitchen with Victoria's daughter, and tries to get him to come with him so that he can be taken back to Grace, so that Homelander won't end up hurting him. But Homelander catches Butcher in the act and makes off with his kid. Meanwhile, Victoria's daughter finds the boys in her mom's room and attacks them, as it turns out that she's the snake-faced kid from the trailer for season 4. She kills a couple of guys and ends up ripping off Kamiko's arm before she and Frenchie make a run for it and jump through a hallway window several stories up, at which point Frenchie is caught by Starlight, but Kamiko plummets to the ground, causing her face to come off with her arm halfway grown back already. Victoria confronts Huey, and they argue about how Huey is dejected because he thought they were friends, and he can't believe she's evil, at which point she threatens him with mutually assured destruction if he outs her for what she's done, and he tries to burn her with acid, but of course it fails, at which point Butcher shoots her in the head, which also fails to accomplish anything, just before she and Smith win the presidential race. President-elect Singer isn't happy that Mother's Milk and the boys couldn't kill Newman, who is now a heartbeat away from the presidency. His heartbeat. Butcher's approached by an old friend named Kessler, played by Jeffrey D. Morgan, who seems to want to bring Butcher into his anti-soups operation. Ashley, Homelander, the Deep, A-Train, and somehow Black Noir, who I guess is a new Black Noir, go over possible replacements for Starlight, and an aggravated Homelander who thinks he's just being ass-kissed orders Deep to blow A-Train but calls it off before it can happen to see if anyone would stand up to him, which, what? Like, that's his whole thing. Like, I don't understand. Anyway, the boys and Annie have a meeting during which she tries to perfect her flying before she tells Mother's Milk and Huey that she thinks they need to cut Butcher loose because he almost got everyone killed. Speaking of Butcher, he has a clandestine meeting with Victoria because he needs her help getting Ryan away from Homelander, and she asks him to get the dirt that Huey has on her away from him in exchange. Huey ends up rushing to the hospital where apparently his father has been admitted after a stroke. Annie is struggling to keep her alter ego separate from herself as she works in an anti-soups organization called the Starlighters. Apparently, Homelander is experiencing some graying of his pubic hair, and he's been plucking it and saving them for some reason. Homelander visits one of the new 7 candidates named Sage, the smartest person in the world, incognito, to ask her what he should do in the wake of his aging, which is causing him to gray and have an enlarged prostate, which she deducted from simple observations, and she gives him some advice before he asks her to join the 7, which she initially rejects. Frenchie, Kamiko, and Mother's Milk observe some Homelander fans who Sage brings into the 7 HQ to meet him, whereupon Deep, Noir, who talks now, and A-Train are told by Homelander to kill them with bats while Sage watches, which they do. The verdict comes down in Homelander's trial, and he's not guilty, which sets off a riot between his fans and the Starlighters outside the courthouse. Annie and A-Train head to the riot, and Homelander just watches the fighting, and the news blames 3 deaths on the Starlighters, even though it's the 3 bodies of the people that Homelander made the other members of the 7 kill, seemingly specifically to tarnish the Starlighters. Homelander is celebrating his victory with Ryan, and Ryan tells Homelander he doesn't want Butcher to die because his mother loved him, at which point Homelander asks Ryan if he loves Butcher, but Ryan doesn't answer. Deep commiserates with his octopus lover, who asks him to just run away with her to the sea. And that was the end of the first episode. The next episode was called Life Among the Septics, and as it starts, A-Train is making a movie called Training A-Train, in which Will Ferrell plays himself playing A-Train's coach. A-Train is then approached by the new Black Noir, who is a little bit concerned about having been made to kill someone the day before. At the hospital, at his father's bedside, Huey finds out that his mother is an essential oils peddler for Vought, as well as that she apparently has power of attorney for medical decisions over his dad, which doesn't sit well with him since he hasn't seen her since he was a kid when she left them. Mother's Milk fires Butcher from the boys when Butcher lets them know that he's dying on the idea that he's got nothing to live for, so he's dangerous. Homelander Ashley and some of the other folks are trying to come up with a brand to market Ryan as his own hero. And Homelander loves the pitch that Vought has come up with, but Sage doesn't, and there's a clash over it. Mother's Milk seems to have figured out that the 3 dead people from the clash at the courthouse were really killed inside Vought headquarters, and he briefs the rest of the team on this. Apparently, a camera-ready fake civilian save scenario has been set up for Ryan, and Noir and the Deep are in on it, and we get to see them rehearse it after the Deep horns his way into it after first approaching Ashley with the idea of being involved with it and being rebuffed. And at the end of the rehearsal, he threatens her with drowning her if she ever treats him so badly again. Meanwhile, also at the rehearsal, Homelander overhears some of the technical people talking about how they have to airbrush Homelander's wrinkles out of any scenes that he's in. The boys and the now fired Butcher follow Sage to something called TruthCon, which seems to be like a Comic-Con for conspiracy theorists, and they attend a talk by a soup called Firecracker, who is like a superhero version of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who apparently thinks that Oprah and Tom Hanks are behind some kind of child trafficking thing. Frenchie and Kimiko are following Firecracker's assistant, and they have a conversation about how Kimiko wants him to get it on for business with his new love interest, Colin, and stop holding back. When they catch up to the assistant, they find him in a sauna with several clones of himself, all of them eating each other's holes in a chain, of which he's at the front, touching himself to a photograph of Firecracker. Annie doesn't seem to know what to do next with her Starlighters, so Huey tries to explain to her that maybe she should just go back to being Starlight because people need a symbol. For some reason, the two of them have been following A-Train, who is interfacing with his nephews until his brother comes along to give them a hard time about how A-Train never actually saved anyone because all of his saves were fake. Sage approaches Firecracker and arranges for her to meet Homelander. Butcher says the wrong thing to Mother's Milk and they have a bit of a row. A-Train gives Huey and Starlight a flash drive containing footage that proves that the scapegoats for the killings at the clash at the courthouse were 20 miles away at the time of the crime. Homelander inserts himself in Ryan's fake save scenario, but Ryan does end up fake saving a little girl by tossing the fake criminal into a wall and actually killing him, which wasn't supposed to happen. It turns out that Sage led Mother's Milk, Frenchie, and Kimiko into a trap, and Firecracker is ordered to kill them for Homelander in exchange for some as yet unannounced reward. But they manage to escape into a bar mitzvah before they're chased by a number of naked clones of the clone guy, who I guess is named Splinter. When Mother's Milk is grabbed and Kimiko is shot in the head and temporarily out, Butcher shows up and starts swinging a crowbar at the Splinter clones before he and the boys end up rallying and putting them all down, killing Splinter Prime, which means all of his clones die, before Firecracker flees the scene. Homelander is dismayed to learn that Ryan is upset about having killed the actor from his save scene, and he tries to dissuade him from even thinking about it. Annie and Huey free the men accused of killing the 3 people that Homeland had the other soups kill with the evidence that they had that they weren't guilty. It turns out that Frenchie killed the family of the man Colin that he seems to be romantically involved with. Huey confronts his mother about the conditions under which she left him and his father when he was a kid and insists on being part of the medical decisions for his dad. Butcher shows up at the HQ and pleads with Mother's Milk because he needs his help to try to get Ryan away from Homelander, but Mother's Milk doesn't seem interested. And that's where the second episode ended. The third episode was called We'll Keep the Red Flag Flying. Homelander gives a rousing anti-Starlighter speech before introducing the new members of the Seven, Firecracker and Sister Sage, to a gathered crowd. Butcher meets with Joe Kessler again, and they hatch a plan to get Ryan away from Homelander and take him away. Some crazy guy shows up at Starlighter headquarters thinking that there are kids in the basement being trafficked, and a slight tussle ensues before he's handled, which of course is a fictionalized version of something that actually happened. The new president has hatched a plan to ban soups from all government positions, which of course doesn't sit well with Vicky. Kimiko and Frenchie team up to take on some actual child traffickers, while Mother's Milk approaches A-Train to try to flip him into an informant. Butcher approaches Ryan over a video game chat to get him to meet with him so they can talk. Annie announces her comeback as Starlight, and Firecracker throws herself at Homelander, telling him that she'll do anything for him. And of course, Homelander doesn't like that Starlight is back. Homelander holds a meeting of the 6 members of the 7, and Sage announces that she knows the footage that cleared the 3 men was stolen and given to Starlight, as well as that the Starlighters have started a new hashtag called Rescue Ryan. Butcher bakes a bunch of drugs into some cookies for when Ryan comes over, but Ryan ends up not eating any. Mother's Milk meets with A-Train and confronts him about the murder of the 3 men and tries to flip him. Kimiko and Frenchie infiltrate the traffickers, and then while Frenchie is high off his ass on hallucinogenics, causing him to see rubber duckies and bubbles everywhere, Kimiko kills guys, and Frenchie ultimately gets sucked into a full-on delusion where he sees Colin sitting on a couch with all his dead family members, as well as a bunch of other dead people that apparently Frenchie has killed. And then he's contacted by the woman who had captured him back in the first season in this delusion. Kimiko then comes across what would seem to be her sister among the people in the trafficker's den. Ryan tells Butcher about how he feels awful for accidentally killing that guy and how Homelander told him he shouldn't even think about it, and about how he knows Butcher doesn't want him. But Butcher has to explain to him that when he said things of that nature to him before, he was just pushing him away because he's a bad man. And he also talks to him about how he'd really like to make things right with Ryan before dumping out the drug-laced cookies. Homelander and Sage confront the woman who helped Starlight get the footage, and once she confessed, Homelander zaps a hole right in her brain. Starlight confronts Firecracker about why she hates her so much, and it turns out that they were rivals in a beauty pageant in which Starlight played Firecracker dirty. Huey and Mother's Milk go to a rehearsal of a Vought on Ice show where they were told by A-Train that Vicky will be meeting Homelander. And when she shows up early, they have to scramble to put their plan in motion, which is to bug her. Huey overhears a meeting between Sage, Homelander, and Vicky with a plot to make her president soon after inauguration, but he's discovered by Homelander and chaos ensues, during which Homelander is blinded by the stage lights and accidentally cuts the star of the ice show in half with his laser eyes before trying to chase Huey, who gets away with help from A-Train. Huey's mother ends up explaining to him why she left, and apparently it was because she had postpartum and couldn't handle being a mother. Joe and Butcher clash over what to do with Ryan, with Joe saying that they have to figure out how to train him so that he can come up and fight Homelander, or they have to kill him so that he doesn't become another Homelander. Deep and Sage end up making a connection and getting it on. Homelander has a meltdown when he realizes that Ryan has been hanging out with Butcher, and the various parts of his fractured psyche end up talking to him and ganging up on him and trying to coach him on how he's screwing up. And they all tell him he needs to go back to the start, back to home, which triggers some brief flashbacks in Homelander. And that's where the 3rd episode and the premiere ended. So I have really liked this show through all the previous seasons. I love the gore. I love the crazy sex stuff and the nudity. It's just all so visually like crazy, and I love it. And I love the Homelander character because he's crazy, and it's just insane fun to watch him go through all his machinations. And I think it's good that he's also somewhat layered, like he's crazy, but he loves his son and he craves actually being loved, like someone who's not a complete sociopath, except most of the time he kind of seems like he is. So he's a very layered character, and I think Antony Starr does a great job playing him. And he's just what makes the show, I think, really super fun in the final analysis, because everything about him is just so bonkers. I also have really liked the Butcher character. Karl Urban is just an awesome actor, and he does a great job in this part. And I really love, everything they're doing with him. I'm curious to see what they do with Jeffrey Dean Morgan. They didn't use him very much in these, episodes, which I thought was weird. I thought they were going to, really use him. I thought he's going to be a big part of the season. Maybe he will, but so far he hasn't. So we'll have to see. But I really like Jeffrey Dean Morgan. I really like the Kimiko character, and I like Huey. I think Frenchie is a lot of fun. So I've really liked this show. I like the aspect of it that shows that the other heroes really don't want to be bad guys, but they feel like they have no choice because they can't do anything about Homelander, who just runs the show. And so they're constantly going back and forth between trying to be good and decent people and doing the crazy shit that he wants them to do, the Deep especially. So I like the whole examination of that. And so I've always liked the show. And, so far this season, they've just given us more of that, which is great. And, you really have to see it to get the full effect of some of the gore. For example, Splinter, when he separates into copies of himself, is very gross and very cool. And of course, he's naked when he does it. So he's running around with his schlong out, which is, just hilarious. And the scenes where the little girl, Vicky's daughter, is attacking people with her face snakes is insane. And so you really have to see that to get it. So I might have sort of given it short shrift in my breakdown, but there's just a lot of great stuff, visually going on in the show. The thing is, and I think I kind of said this when I was reviewing Gen V when that was on, and how I liked it better because it wasn't as layered as The Boys is. I mean, you want layers to your show, but you don't want so many layers that it gets to the point where you're like, why are we seeing this? And unfortunately, with these first 3 episodes of season 4, I got that feeling. And, I say that because, like, I don't care about Huey's dad and Huey's relationship with his mother and all of that. I don't care. Like, why is that there? It's there to, I guess, add, depth to the Huey character. And, that's a fine thing to do, but I don't care about this plot at all in the context of what's going on, which is the domination of the super people of society and the forces that are trying to keep that from happening. And in the smaller picture, the boys who are trying to stop Homelander from being in charge of America and just reigning chaos over everything, and how the faction of people who support him are all crazy and like Nazis. And that's the story that I want to see more of. By contrast, the story of Homelander and his situation with Ryan and how Butcher figures into that is all good stuff because it shows stuff about their characters. And I think that's important because they are really the main characters. Homelander, of course, you need to see the different layers of his personality and his psyche. And so they needed to have this plot in order to portray him that way because it's supposed to make you think about the nature of good and evil and how fragile the human psyche is and how people go through struggles with mental illness and so forth. So that's all very important. Whereas the story about Huey and his mom and dad, it's not really. Huey's a pretty normal guy and he's a good guy, and they don't need to be adding all this backstory to his character, to going this deep. So I think it's a little insane. I don't care about Kamiko and this whole child trafficking plot, which again is somehow connected to her past. I don't care. I don't care about the love life of Frenchie and Colin. I don't care. I don't care about that. I don't know why they insist on spending time on that stuff. I mean, I guess maybe that's the stuff they have to write to keep the episodes from being 20 minutes long or of only having 4 episodes in a season. But like, I would almost prefer that to these episodes of this drawn out stuff that nobody cares about. Like, I don't care about Huey and his mom and Frenchie and the Kamiko trying to stop the child traffickers, and Frenchie and Colin having a relationship. I don't care. Give me Butcher. Give me Homelander. Give me the plot about Vicky and how they're going to try to stop her from like becoming actual president. Give me more about Firecracker, this right-wing crazy person that's also coming up in the ranks of the Supes and sort of being like a second Homelander. Give me more about that. Give me more about Starlight figuring out who she wants to be. I want to see that. I don't want to see this other stuff. So those are my critiques. I'll tell you what I'm worried about, and that is that they're veering into social commentary territory. I mean, I suppose they kind of have dabbled in it all along, but like they really kind of hit it over the head this week about, how Homelander's forces, the bad guys, are exactly like MAGA. And they're painting that a little too strongly. What's funny about that is there was a guy who criticized last season for doing that kind of thing, and I didn't really see it. And in fact, I made a video about how he was crazy for saying that. But there's no denying that in these 3 episodes, they totally went there. And, I don't disagree with it. But I don't think they should have had any business like painting that so heavily. I think they should have held back from doing that so heavily. And I hope that in the next 5 episodes of the season, they don't continue making that connection so super strongly. Like they even took it to the point where, firecracker is going on about the child trafficking ring in the pizza place, or in association with food ordering. And then the guy shows up at the STARLIGHT headquarters looking for the basement where the kids are, just like happened in real life at a pizza place that was supposedly the center of a trafficking ring for kids. So I think they kind of went a little too heavy on that, and I hope they pull it back. But other than that, I thought the premiere was very good. I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. Hopefully, we'll get more crazy sex stuff, more crazy gore, because that's just the best. And I'll be back to do breakdown and review videos for each episode as it's released. For now, I'm going to get out of here. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.